first thing that went through my mind was, oh my God, I've just ruined my life.
And all of a sudden I got a warm, moist feeling and realized that I'd blown a condom.
And I was stranded at the Denver airport for 3 days.
Everywhere I went, I was going for the first time as a disabled person.
The hardest thing for me when I got home at first was just facing people outside my family.
Some of the things that were hard for me were getting over the perception. It wasn't necessarily other people's perception of me, but my own perception of myself and what I can accomplish.
My initial reaction to my injury was I had just screwed up my life permanently.
There are over 250,000 people in the United States living with a spinal cord injury. We have made this video with the help of spinal cord injury survivors to assist you and your family in your transition from the hospital to the community. Shorter hospital stays caused by cuts in insurance have made initial adjustment to discharge much more difficult. We hope that the real-life experience of fellow survivors who have successfully negotiated this transition will help you in your reintegration into the community and your pursuit of a healthy, active, and rewarding life. Each person faced a unique and very personal challenge. How these challenges were met was the product of the personality and special circumstances of each individual. The one thing they all have in common is the application of creativity and perseverance in the face of adversity. Your solutions will be unique to you.
Early on, after my injury, I spent most of my time at home, really trying to come to terms with the loss, come to terms with the emotional pain, trying to literally find my way through life. It was just a time of looking for myself, looking to see what direction I could go.
Adjustment to a spinal cord injury is never smooth sailing. Moments of satisfaction and achievement are often punctuated by frustration and struggle. Many approaches and activities have brought fulfillment to survivors. These are their stories as told by them.
What I've really found to be good about trips like this or other activities is that they're the things that have made the biggest difference for me after being out of the hospital, where you have to figure out, well, how do I get in or out of this glider, or how do I get onto a water ski or into a snow ski? You learn things much more than just the activity itself. You learn things that can translate into your daily life. And you're enriched by the activity, of course. So the benefits are really great and more than you would expect when you first show up for something like this.
Yeah, this was my first time doing a glider ride, and something I've always wanted to do. I wanted to do hot air balloon or just getting up in the sky, anything as close to flying as possible. And it's funny, most of the people I mentioned it to, friends and relatives, said, oh, I don't know if I'd do that. That sounds dangerous. But I don't think they crash very often. One moment of apprehension was after they put me in the plane. Well, they told me I was going to do some of the flying, which I thought was pretty interesting, but if they trusted me to do that, I was willing to. But when they attached the tow rope to the plane in front of us, and I saw it was this little thin nylon cord, and I realized, well, we're really going to do this, huh? They're going to drag us down this runway, and okay. But once we got up in the air, I was just thrilled most of the time, and especially catching updrafts and then having some control. When Mike would basically let me take the rudder, he says, it's all you now, and telling me what to do, how to bank it and steer it, and what it was able to do. And some of it felt like a boardwalk ride, that kind of quality of inner thrill. But I loved it, and I loved looking down at the earth from that altitude, and I would love to do it again anytime.
No, it took me about 2 years to really get past all of the emotional and physical challenges that I was facing. And with that, I started to get involved with wheelchair sports. I spent about 8 years swimming. I spent another 2 years playing quad rugby. And in doing so, I really had an opportunity to interact with my peers. And my peers really were the ones who helped me find the direction that gave me the opportunity to see that I could pursue a life of happiness, a life of opportunity. And that's exactly what happened. I turned my life around.
Off we go now. And the celebrities have moved the ball out of bounds. Going to inbound the ball for the Redwood Rollers.
Wheelchair sports have been the catalyst for many individuals in their adaptation to spinal cord injury. The support from and sharing with team members, the sense of mastering the sport, the feeling of re-engaging in an active life are just a few of the rewards described by a participant.
My name is Shirley Johnson, and I'm a T7 paraplegic. I was injured in 1980 when I was 21 years old. When I saw the flyer last year about wheelchair basketball, it was a dream come true. I've just seen it, on TV, and I've heard about it. I've loved basketball ever since I was a kid, and I just love playing with people my size. How it's been beneficial is the team playing. This is the first team sport I've actually been on. I've done lots of solitary sports like, water skiing and horseback riding and therapeutic horseback riding, but this team sport is great. It just makes me feel so good to feel appreciated by folks. It's really good because doing this with the ball, if you saw my shots, I'm still pretty weak, but this is something you never do in a wheelchair, and so it's asking me to build up this upper strength, which is good to counter, this all the time with the weight lifting, and so it's really good for my my arms and the rest of for balance. So it's great exercise. The psychological is just, it's something that I didn't know I really missed that much until I started playing. It's like, wow, I get to feel this way again. I get to, get hit in the head with a basketball again. It's, it's great. Well, they actually came out to support me today, and it's been great because, they just, they don't see me as being, so outside of society. I'm part of society, having a game and lots of people coming, and people aren't going, oh, how weird, people are supporting and clapping.
We got a phone call about this event, and it's probably from Shirley Johnson.
I'm a student at Sonoma State. I'm graduating this spring. I was laid off at Hewlett-Packard after being there 19 years, and I decided to go back and get a bachelor's in science, and so I'm graduating in spring, and we'll just see, the world's wide open for me after that. Be patient with yourself, to have a sense of humor. You got to have a sense of humor when you're in a wheelchair, and you see a lot of us that have been in chairs a long time can laugh at the most bizarre things. And just, if you have a dream, if you want to go for something, go for it. Don't let anything get in your way.
Through sports and spending time with my peers, it gave me enough self-confidence to return to school. I started off at San Jose City College and ended up with my master's in counseling at San Jose State University. My master's degree offered me the opportunity to go to work at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center, where I currently work as the peer support coordinator for persons with traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries.
Where's the way? Where's your dad? Oh dear. Yeah, we've been together 3 years. For 3 years. Or the guy was just
Thank you.
It's called a sperm whale and it's blowing. It's a humpback whale.
For using a computer, the only adaptive equipment that I need, well, it makes things a lot easier, is a trackball. And I used to use a typing aid. I have a U-cuff with a pointer on it, and I type one-handed. Backup steering or sensitized steering, which I don't think he needs it, but I want to at least give him that option. Okie doke. All right, thanks, Liz. Talk to Julian, and I was thinking, make like a U-cuff on the shifter, but it like sets on top of the shifter and loops around so that he can slide his hand and it's connected to the button so that he can push it over, which will press the button in and then pull that shifter down.
Just got a hand control in it.
However, so transferring this little piece here.
Or depending on how they're equipped, anywhere from $42,000 to $50,000.
What's kind of the first steps that people need to look at?
We would just add a easy lock, a lockdown bracket.
Just turning his AC on.
Oh, I need to know.
So it's a 6-way adjustable seat. It'll go up and down, left and right, and forward and back. And so I can position it wherever I want.
My initial reaction once I realized that I was complete quad was one of, anger. I got stuck on focusing on all the loss that I was going to miss out on. And that created a lot of anger for me. So I was your typical angry quad for a couple of years. When I started to focus on the things that I could still do instead of what I couldn't do, it really helped with the anger. A lot of the anger started to go away. In every month, and every year when I would start to, see people and I hadn't seen for a while, everyone would say, "Yeah, you seem much happier." And, that just continued and where most of the time I don't even think about being paralyzed or in a wheelchair when I go out in public, and I'm sure a lot of guys in chairs that have been there for a while, you just get over that and you just, for yourself, this is me, So the deciding factors that got me turned around were two things. well, probably 3, but the 2 initial was deciding to go back to school at Fresno City College, and the second was meeting someone else, a girl, and falling in love and realizing that, you know, someone is going to want me. You know, that the chair's not going to scare away everyone. There are some women who are able to overlook that and love me for who I am and not treat me like, or they not treat me like they're my attendant. And the third thing, which came on later, was playing quad rugby. So those 3 things really helped. The independence came with quad rugby. The more I played quad rugby, the more independent and the stronger I got. You know, went from a power chair to a manual chair. Hanging out with guys that were in chairs, seeing how they battled things or overcame things, helped me realize that I need to start trying things that I just assumed that I couldn't do or would let someone else do for me. If you want to be independent, you've got to work on your strength, you've got to work on your endurance. You've got to get into your community, which is guys in chairs and the people that you have things in common with. Makes it easier. I think if you just focus on what you can still do, you'll be a lot happier. You know, don't dwell on the things that we'll never do. My last bit of advice for quads is do what you can do, even if it takes you a little longer, because it just helps with your relationships with other people that are around you, whether it's your wife, your brother, your best friend, your co-workers. If you do the little things for yourself, even though it takes you a little longer, I know it's a lot easier to just ask someone, can you go get me a Coke out of the fridge? But if you can do that, do it. It's just going to help you in the long run with your own self-respect. And when you really do need help, when those around you that are the closest, they'll help you without any attitude. They're more willing to help you when they know that you've already tried it and you know that you can't do it. So when you can do something, put in a little extra effort and do it for yourself.
Before I got hurt, I was a soccer player and I was on the track team at my high school. I was captain of the track team and the soccer team. So I was very involved with sports and I just loved it. I was very competitive and I really enjoyed it. And so when I got hurt, I was trying to figure out, well, what sport am I going to play? Obviously, I can't play soccer. And I tried a few different things. I tried basketball, tennis, wheelchair racing, and I just fell in love with tennis. I thought it was so much fun to hit the ball and to push around the court, and I got very involved with it. I started playing several times a week, and then as soon as I finished my graduate school, I pretty much went on the tennis tour full-time, started traveling around the world, playing all these tournaments, maybe 20 tournaments a year, practicing 5 or 6 days a week, lifting weights, you know, the whole thing. And it was so exciting for me to get involved with that. I felt like that's when I started really looking to the future instead of to the past. And I was just so happy with what I was learning and what my body could do. And I wasn't thinking about, you know, all the things I couldn't do anymore. And I was meeting a lot of people who were in the same situation that had had accidents, and I was watching them and learning from them how they dealt with little things in life, and that was great. And I met some just beautiful people, and it made me think, you know, there are some cool people out there in wheelchairs, and so, you know, maybe it's okay to be in one. It took a while to get used to people staring at me, and I think it's only been maybe in the past 5 years that I've really gotten used to it and not let it bother me. It did take a while, depending on the day. Some days, you know, when you're in a good mood, nothing bothers you, but when you're already frustrated about something and people are staring at you and they're always trying to help you get in your car, and then you just feel like, you know, wow, do I really look like I need that much help? Do I look that pathetic that you have to come over and help me? Because I feel like me getting in and out of my car, it's so easy for me. I do it every day, you know, several times a day. And I just don't like to think that it looks like I'm struggling when I do that. People offer me help all the time. I generally just smile and say, thank you, I'm okay. But often they'll still help anyway, and they'll start grabbing wheels and parts, and it's always makes it harder, but I try to be nice because I realize that people are trying to be helpful, and I appreciate that. For me, it was very helpful to meet people who had spinal cord injuries also and get to know them, and I learned a lot from them, just watching them and talking with them about their lives and how they do things. That was a huge help, and it made me feel a lot better about being in a chair, because in my small town, I think I was the only one who had a spinal cord injury, and it's very isolating, and you feel like you're the only one going through this. But when you meet a lot of people who have gone through similar things, it really makes you feel better about it. To someone who's newly injured, my advice would be try to stay positive as much as you can, but make sure you let yourself feel all your feelings and deal with all the emotions that you have. If you try to just ignore your anger or your sadness, it's gonna come up later. So it's better to deal with it, I think, in the beginning and just get through it and move on. But definitely try to be positive. There's so many amazing things you can still do in a wheelchair, and you can have a wonderful, exciting, fun life. But it does take some getting used to, some planning and some adjustment. So I would just give yourself some time to go through that.
Mickey K.
My injury was November 23rd, 2004. Some of the main challenges that I've faced after my injury are mostly mental challenges in accepting the fact that there's a lot of things that I did before that I'm not going to be able to do again, at least not right now. You know, maybe I'll get better, maybe not. But there are a lot of things that I can no longer do. With a lot of sports that I used to play, I can't do it. You know, my friends and I always used to go hiking and things like that, and I can't do that. So just getting that into my head, you know, it's easy to get depressed thinking about all the things that you can't do in that way. And getting over that was the best way that helped me get over it, was finding other sports that I could play. Basketball has been awesome for me adjusting to my injury. It's got the competition and the intensity. You know, you get the same endorphin rush you do playing an able-bodied sport. If you're a sports person, no matter what sport you're playing, you still get that same feel when you're playing it. And just doing something where your mind is occupied in that way, it takes your mind off other things you might be worrying about, you know, similar to other sports people play. Well, both team and individual sports have different assets that I like. The basketball, the team sport, I like because it's an awesome way to meet people. You make friends. When you're on a sports team, you just make friends with the people on your team. And it's been really good for that. It's fun coming out and seeing these guys and talking with them, and you know, we'll still talk about all the issues we have with our injuries and otherwise. So in that way, it's been a great way of meeting people and making friends, and a great place to get stuff off your chest if you have to. You know, well, my injury was about 1.5 years ago, almost now, and so you know, I'm still adapting. You know, by no means is that process over, nor will it ever be. You know, I imagine. But my advice would be to have faith that things will get better, because they seem really, really bad often when you're in the hospital right after an injury. And even in the hospital, things will feel all right, and when you get home, maybe things will start to feel really bad. But have faith that things will get better, and try to get yourself doing as many things as possible, regardless of how you're feeling. it's hard, you know, if you're depressed or something, to go out and do stuff. But in my experience, every time I've been sad or down or, you know, depressed about my injury, going and just doing anything, getting out of the house, going and doing something, even though I don't want to, when it's done and when I'm there doing whatever it is, I always feel better. And it's kind of like I set out with that mentality early on, you know, and oftentimes my mom had to make me get up and do something. But through just kind of doing that each day and trying to stay busy, it kind of came along unexpectedly to where now all of a sudden, you know, I'm at school playing basketball, you know, just doing a lot of activities that are enjoyable, actually enjoyable, not just occupying my time, taking my mind off things, even though they do that too. And it's kind of like unexpectedly, all of a sudden, it feels, you know, I still hate the fact that I'm in a chair, but it feels more okay to be this way because there's still a lot of things that I'm doing that are fun. And it's not like, oh, well, this is the best thing I can do in a chair. You know, I have to settle for it even though it's not that fun. It's like, basketball is fun, I like it. And going to school, you know, not as fun as basketball, but it feels worthwhile. So staying busy and having faith that things will get better.
Hey, come on in, man.
Good. Hi, man.
Hey, it's good to see you, man.
Back at it.
All right.
Let's go.
Pretty much the biggest physical barriers I've had to overcome has been the inability to use my hands. You know, I've always, you know, been very musical as far as, yeah, I play guitar, piano, drums, and those all require a lot of hand dexterity and strength and grip to play. And since I've been injured, you know, I just don't have the fine muscle coordination or the strength in my hands to play the instruments. So I pulled it out the other night, tried to play it, and ended up breaking one of the strings off because I put too much tension on it because I was getting frustrated. You know, second most would obviously being the inability to walk. You know, I was always very athletic. You know, growing up, I did sports all my life. I played football all throughout high school, and you know, worked a very physical job. I worked in a warehouse where I was on my feet, you know, 10 to 12 hours a day, and you know, not being able to, you know, say play sports anymore, or you know, even get up and walk around the house anymore, has just been unbelievably difficult to get used to. You know, rolling on, you know, some of these real thick carpets is tough, whereas, you know, if you have the use of your legs, you just walk over it, you know, and you don't think twice about it. The biggest change we've had to make to the house has been the bathroom. You can see here on the door that we actually took the door out of the frame, and they had to take the hinges off, the molding off. Man, you know, I'd wake up some mornings, usually on weekends, because I used to, you know, go out and do fun stuff on the weekend, and I'd look out the window and see it's just a bright, sunny day, and it would just depress the hell out of me, because I would think, you know, before I got injured, that, you know, I could call up, you know, my best friend and say, let's go do something, you know, let's go to the lake, let's go shoot some pool. You know, let's go do something, take advantage of this nice day, and you know, just laying there with the realization that I can't do that just killed me. I mean, I wanted to tear my hair out. It's one of the worst feelings because, you know, here it is, you know, this nice day, and you know, I've got to lay in bed and, you know, do my bowel program, or, you know, wait for somebody to, you know, help me, you know, clean up and get in the wheelchair. At the time I had a halo on and I could see the bars in my peripheral vision. So it was a virtual prison that I couldn't get out of. And I just fucking hated it. And it was, looking back on it, I think it made me appreciate, you know, the stuff I can do now so much more. Because now, at least I can get in and out of my buddies' cars, and, you know, they can call me up and say, you want to do something? And I say, yeah, give me an hour or two and I'll be ready.
Oh,
And I will go. And it's so much better now, and I think I appreciate it so much more because I had to go so long without it. And so, I mean, it's, it's such a cliche that, you don't fully appreciate something until you don't have it. But unfortunately, it was so true. When I didn't have the outlets available for, say my friends coming over, or the ability to read a book or listen to music, I would become angry and frustrated very quickly. And unfortunately, I would take those emotions out on those closest to me, primarily my parents, just because they were around, and I a lot of times couldn't hold it in, and they got the brunt of the anger and the frustration, and they really didn't deserve it. I know they didn't ask for it, and it's not their fault that I'm in this situation, and they've done the best they can to help me out, as much as they can, and try and make me feel better and feel at home, even though I'm not in my own room. But they definitely didn't deserve what they got. Now instead of getting angry and yelling at my mom or my dad, I can go outside and push myself up and down the sidewalk until I get tired, or I can hop on the exercise table behind me and say, work on doing push-ups or shoulder depression, or some sort of physical activity that will not only release the emotion and the anger and the frustration, but that will also benefit me in some way, as far as strengthening my shoulders, or my muscles that say don't work as well. And that way I'm getting stronger, and also letting go of some of the tension without taking it out on people I care about.
The first number of months, every social situation that was not with family, that was out in the public, even with friends, was always had the possibility of embarrassment, that I'd have spasms, I'd blow a condom, that people would be looking at me, that I would be clumsy, that I couldn't handle things, that even, say for example, shaking hands, that it took some extra effort for me to shake people's hands. And that's a place where you want to have a good handshake. I didn't want to look like I was disabled. That people would notice that, and people were, in my view, embarrassed as well, and they didn't know what to say to me. I went one time to a barber that I'd not gone to before because a friend recommended him. And barbers are always very talkative and also get their customers to talk a lot. This guy was very silent, very quiet, and I couldn't figure out quite why, but I thought, well, okay, I got my hair cut and left. Later I talked to my friend, and he had gone to see the barber a few days later. And he said, oh, did my friend come who was in the wheelchair? And he said, yeah, he said he did. But he said, I didn't know what to say to him. So I was afraid if we talked about sports or something, he'd get depressed or feel awful. I learned in that process that one of the things that I had to do was to give people something to talk about other than my disability. So I had to give people topics of conversation or lead them. A social situation that did happen one time that was something I didn't know what to do with. It was probably a year or so after I was injured, and I was out in the yard, and there was this guy who came along who was, had hired him to do something, or were going to hire him to do something, and he came up to me and said, oh, you're the crippled boy, aren't you? And I remember being just kind of stunned. It was sort of like nobody had ever said anything like that to me. And I said, well, I'm in a wheelchair, yeah. But I wasn't kind of going to allow him to call me a cripple, which at that time had a pretty negative connotation, and made me realize, once again, it was a reminder of how some people would view me, and especially older people, people who were in their 50s or 60s or 70s. To me, that was a lot older at that time, and that I was an object of pity, probably not ever disdain, but pity. And I think it made me more determined not to be piteous.
The smartest thing I did after my injury, which took time, was getting involved with my peers. So much before that was just the fear of the unknown. But doing that just made a huge difference in my life. So much confidence grew from making that one decision to do it. But I think it's that much easier if you attend the support groups that are consistently available. That's certainly one of the ways that I learned it, to learn and find the ways that you can appreciate what's available to you. Again, in my experience, it may be 6 months, it may be a year, but you're going to find that you'll start driving, and that's something that you may not have even planned on. You might find that you're in a position to become an architect. You might find that you're going to be in a relationship and get married, have children. These are all possibilities that are available that you're not going to think about. The anger is going to go away. The opportunities are going to come your way. Nowadays, our communities are built around giving people with disabilities the opportunity to do what they so choose to do. People understand. People are there to help. Don't close the door in their face. Open the door for them. I think that's gonna turn things around. It's not all gloom and doom. This is the hand that we're dealt, and we need to move through it. There are a lot of people that will be there for you. And if you take the opportunity to accept what they're offering, you're going to find that you can move that much further, that much faster, and enjoy that much more of your life than you ever anticipated when you were first injured. I know I did. I hope that you can.
I've thought about what would be good advice for people to receive before they left the hospital. I'm not sure that people would listen to that. I'm not sure I would have listened to it. And when I think about it now, I think that what I would have liked somebody to tell me is that what I was about to embark on was going to be pretty scary, pretty difficult, and survivable. And that I would run into difficult situations and I'd figure some way through them. That I could learn to help myself, and that I should trust that my family could help me as well. That underneath it all, that I had the ability to cope with the world in a wheelchair.